Average order value this, average order value that. Have you been listening to too many gurus about average order value? Let's find out. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host Claire Hancock is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So on this week's episode of What's Simon Eating This Week, it's what, Claire? Ramen. There you go. You got it.
Obsessed with homemade ramen bowls, haven't you?
Oh, I'm just a cook, and I was going to say I was just a poet, and I just don't know it, but I can't say I'm just a cook and a what's the rhyme?
No, I don't think there is anything.
We're going to have to swiftly move on from here, but basically, I'm enjoying homemade ramen kits with my little broths and noodles and prawns and fresh vegetables. It's really healthy as well. After last week when we were talking about the masseuse exercise, now healthy food as well is into it. I'm not always into healthy food, you know that as well.
You do like a bit of junk food every now and again, don't you?
Well, because we were talking about my pastry obsession only a few weeks ago, but we can't always make it about what I eat. Maybe we'll talk about what you eat one day. But
oh God, I think our audience would be bored to tears, I think. Yeah,
I love a bit of cooking, if you can call it that.
But this is the sign of a man that has
a very well-run business that has staff that operates without, what do they call it? A business that works without him in it.
Cooking fresh ramen most days for his lunch. So if anybody is ever enviable, then just look this way. But I'm sure some of our listeners have maybe reached that point as well.
Yeah. Do you know how that works? It's when you've got a profitable business model, as they always say,
very true,
from the off, good turnover and good profit margins, you can then afford good people.
But I would say if anybody wants a profitable business model, don't go into a estate agency.
Oh, I don't know.
No, I wouldn't go for that.
Oh, it works for me. 85% GP? Yeah, I love that. Anyway, let's move on to this week's news story of the week. So this week's news story of the week I thought was really interesting, and it's going to shock you, the headline here. Demand for prime offices is so high that the tenants are looking up to 6 years early. And this is the news that after COVID and no one was going to go back to the office, that big businesses are feeling that they have to start their search for prime office residents up to 6 years early because it's so difficult to find and so difficult to get, and there's such a shortage of it apparently.
It is incredibly difficult to find the right commercial premises. I think if you're wanting like a high street location, if you're like a retail business, then not so much. And if you are not needing something very specific, if you just need like general warehouse space or something like that, again, that might be a little bit easier. But if you need anything of any sort of specialism or uniqueness, then this is like incredibly difficult to find commercial space. I think it's probably the number one problem that pretty much every one of my clients comes across.
It's interesting, isn't it, that how quickly human beings snap back.
I'll tell you why I think this has hit the news, because I very much expect that this is referring to bigger businesses.
Certainly prime. I mean, let's not pretending like the whole office commercial space world is on fire. This is about really super prime, in the right place. We're talking about, and key businesses that want the right office space. But
I think a big part of what's driving this is that the rules around energy efficiency in offices changed a couple of years ago, and it's now become mandatory for big businesses to include statements in their annual accounts and their annual reports saying about, even down to like the detail of what energy usage they have in their buildings and things like that. So it's definitely become much more of a talking point for businesses and thinking about how they can make their buildings in particular more energy efficient. Obviously, we've seen a huge increase in energy costs as well, so I think that's driving a lot of this as well. So anybody that's thinking about moving is not going to be going to the dilapidated building that needs a little bit of a lick of paint down the road. They are going to be looking for these swanky prime new build or newly refurbished properties, so I can fully understand this.
And they're talking about companies seeking top tier, what they call trophy office buildings, high quality amenities and environments around it. Apparently these real grade A office spaces now carry a premium of up to 31.4% higher than the average. And this is a global story as well. So it is that snapback after COVID globally. But actually they put it down to not not so much about the building they're mentioning here, although there's always underlying reasons why people are doing things, but really about attracting and retaining talent in a very competitive labour market. And we do know that the labour market's been extremely challenging for businesses to get hold of people of late, and actually offering the best amenities, the right location to attract them and all those kind of things probably is kind of part of a key strategy for these businesses.
I take things like that with a pinch of salt, because I'm not convinced that many people would take a job based off of a swanky office. You know, I have a great example of this when back in my career days, I went for an interview at Rightmove. If anybody's ever been to the Rightmove office, that is proper swanky. They've got like, their floor is not a floor, it's like a town. It's very weird. And they've got concrete cows in the office. They've got all sorts of gadgets, and it's just a really cool place to be. But I didn't like the business. And at the end of the day,
you're a bit weird though. I mean, most people will go into that who are in the employee mindset and would just be blown away by that and think, this is a cool company, I want to work here. And it's half the hook that gets them talent, isn't it? Those things. So I don't know. I'm a bit on the fence with your comments on that one. I'm not sure. I think people do, it's the same reason that people, buy BMWs and drive around in Jaguars, because they give a shit about what they look like, and wearing their career and wearing their job, if it's a cool company, is part of the status, isn't it?
I think there's a famous sort of study, I think it might have been by McKinsey, and it's this whole thing about hygiene factors with employees. And they're like, there's these hygiene factors which they say are like these basic things like salary, hours, things like that must be at a basic level. And then there's what they call motivating factors, and the motivating factors are, sense of achievement and nice office environment and perks and things like that. And the kind of the logic is that you can throw all of these motivating factors at people, but if you don't have the hygiene factors right, if you don't have the basics right, a swanky office is not going to make a dot of difference. And I think that maybe applies in this situation.
What do you think about perks that really do save you money? So I'll tell you where I'm going with this one. I used to go to Bloomberg's offices in London because I used to work with the magazine Bloomberg Business Week, and the lady that worked there took us up into the atrium area for a meeting, and basically they just provide free food all day long. I mean, phenomenal food. So you can eat there breakfast, lunch and dinner. No cost, nothing. And the original idea of it was to, if you provide all that on the site, people are saving money by eating there, but therefore they're staying in the office longer hours.
Yeah, Google are a classic one of this. They make their work environments like a campus because they want people to be there in the evening, working long hours.
Just want to feel like it's a lifestyle and a job. And so that's interesting where I've seen that sort of play out.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree that I think they're very unique work environments, like where people sort of live at the office and it becomes their life in terms of like their friendship circles there, their social life is there. And I think it's a very different sort of concept to probably what most businesses are focusing on, is just getting a good enough office that means that you're not embarrassed to have visitors to, and that things are not constantly breaking down all the time, and it's a nice place where people want to work. I think if you can just hit that minimum, I don't think you need to be shelling out for this prime retail space.
Yeah, and on a small scale, I can feel the motivation, because when I was originally based in a secure storage building in an office that only just fitted, we had to climb over the desks for us both to get in, and it didn't have a window. At the point where we had to take on our first sort of external member of staff, we did feel that this was not going to attract the right person.
I think we're at risk of turning into a one-trick pony here, because last week's podcast was all about commercial property and we talked about self-storage as well. And this week, so far, all we've talked about is commercial property and self-storage. So there we go. That's our new two topics of the week. It's really accidentally
weird, isn't it, that that's happened? But no, it is a true story that, when you bootstrap your business, sometimes you do end up in a metal box with no windows. Anyway, let's move on to this week's deep dive, where you're going to talk about average order value. So you're going to upset some people here, aren't you, Claire?
I am. I'm going to say something
you
very
love to upset some people.
controversial.
I mean, perhaps you can upset the big guns like the Alex Hormozes of the world and the James Sinclairs of the world, the guys that bleat on about average order value, because it's so important, isn't it, in business? Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah, this is 100%.
It's like the be on and end all.
Actually, I'm not afraid to say, I was watching one of James, I don't know if it was a podcast or a video or something, and he bleats on and on and on about average order value like it's a holy grail. And I wanted to talk about this to demonstrate that, absolutely, average order value for a lot of businesses, especially James Sinclair's businesses, is the holy grail. But it's not really that relevant in my business, and it's not that relevant in your business, and it's not relevant in a lot of other businesses either. So I think the reason why I want to talk about this today is because just because one expert says do something doesn't mean it's the right cookie cutter approach for every business. And if average order value isn't right for your business, then I'll give you some alternatives of what you can be tracking instead to make sure that your business stays on track.
Perfect.
Hello. What happened there, Simon?
What do you have for us?
Average order value is just simply the average sales value of every transaction that you do.
Sure.
Now, the reason why I added the word transaction in there is because if you think about some businesses, they do a lot of transactions. You know, if you think about retail businesses, hospitality, wholesalers, e-commerce, things like that. I think about James Sinclair's businesses. You know, he's got people going into his parks, into Rossi ice cream, people are ordering ice creams, all of that type of thing. They're these
small and regular transactions.
Small, regular transactions.
The thing I most see this resonate with this is things like supermarkets. You know, they're always looking at what they call their get the basket spend up.
Yes, and e-commerce sites, all of that type of thing. So absolutely, if you're transacting with a customer and they're spending £30 with you, you want to try and get that up to 50 because, you know, the transaction cost of that order is the same. You know, if you've got somebody coming into your shop and filling a basket, or, you know, if you're delivering an online order, the delivery is the same regardless of how much they spend. It's that type of mentality.
Isn't the argue about why this is so powerful? Because that person's already in your establishment. Therefore, the expensive sunk cost, the marketing cost of getting there has already been done.
The customer acquisition cost is being completed.
The power of upping their spend is just more pure profit on top of that.
Yeah. And you see this a lot. You know, the best example of this is Amazon. If you put something electronic in your basket, then they suggest batteries to you. And it's that type of logic of what more could we sell to this customer to get more of their just to get them to spend more money.
It's kind of gone insane though, hasn't it? Because 30 years ago, this was just a case, this was the upsell. It was can I get the cleaning thing when you buy the sofa? Can I get the insurance when I sell you the fridge? Now it's just like off the charts, the upselling element, isn't it? It's almost like at what point it does that? Because I find as a consumer that it's almost off-putting and very aggressive in some organisations. They really badly balance this.
I think PC World is the worst for this.
AO are the absolute worst.
We ordered a dishwasher.
Almost harassment.
10 times they called.
Harassment to sell you insurance. Harassment.
It's shocking. 10 times I had a call from AO. So, it can be good and it can be bad. But anyway, where average order value really resonates is where it doesn't necessarily need to be low value. It just needs to be frequent transactions. So if you're doing lots of orders a day, then this is really relevant. But I was thinking about this. I had a customer on board and they said, you know what, I need to be tracking average order value. Can you calculate that? Can you put that in my monthly board pack? And I was like, well, I don't think that's the right metric to be tracking for your business because what are you going to do to increase it? You know, take my business profit cash growth. Most of my customers sign up to like a monthly retainer, which is a fixed price that they pay me every month to get like management accounts and finance director services. So if what else am I going to do? They're paying a retainer, they're getting so much time. Occasionally they might have bespoke needs, like they might need, business plan because we're doing finance or something non-recurrent. But what can I do to increase my average order value other than bolt on all these extra services, which right now, personally, I just think is a distraction to my business. And secondly, I can put my prices up.
Okay, so
it's not relevant to me.
If it's not relevant to you, what KPIs should you be focusing on if you were the non-relevant business?
So I think businesses where it's not relevant is these one-off businesses like a state agency.
Businesses that start from zero every month.
Like service-based businesses. It doesn't even have to be zero because my clients pay me monthly. They are a monthly client, but if you've got a limited product range, so I don't know, like if you're a van hire company and it's a fixed fee to hire the van for a day, what are you going to do to increase your average order value? Yes, you can do some bolt-ons like insurance and stuff like that, but even if you sold insurance to everybody, then what?
You sell the GPS, you sell the extra insurance, you sell, what do the car hire companies? They do it, don't they? They do sell you
But the reality is you're going to, other than all these extras, which actually we've just discussed piss customers off and isn't your core business, what are you going to do to increase that average order value? Other industries, I don't think it applies to as events businesses as well, when you have these one-off big events.
What about removal companies?
Well,
it's a trick question.
Once you sell boxes and tape,
that's why it was my trick question, because they do, because they're selling the boxes, selling the what about upselling the element that they can, they unwrap the stuff or they do the pre-packaged service before. There are always elements that can.
I think that what I'm saying is, okay, generally you could say average order value could apply to these businesses, but is it going to be a key performance indicator?
Actually, the question is, I guess the question you're asking is, should it be a key performance indicator, or is it a distraction? Does it distract from the core mission that could be focused elsewhere? Because you can have all these fancy KPIs, and we hear lots of gurus out there that give us a million different KPIs that we should be following. And if you focus on them all, you're probably going to achieve nothing. If you focus on the wrong one, it comes at a cost of the right one. And like every upside has an equal downside. So I think the point you're trying to make, I'm guessing, is that exactly that. This is really paramount for baskets of goods type services, but actually it's probably a distraction for
and
some
I'm
other
not
businesses.
saying, estate agency is a really good example where predominantly the service that you're providing is selling somebody's house and they pay you for that, and that value. If you ask
Connells, they say predominantly selling the mortgage.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
and that's the thing.
There's only so many things you can bolt onto that. So you can sell an EPC, you can do legal, you can do a mortgage referral, all of those types of things. But if you're not somebody that I would say has like multiple different products and different services, then it's probably not going to be relevant to you. So I think that's sort of what you need to think about is if you're somebody that has got maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 products, it's one of them that is your core, and then there's just some additional bolt-ons, then average order value is probably not going to be a key performance indicator. Doesn't mean that it's not a worthwhile task to do, to have a look at your average order value maybe once or twice a year and sit down and have a bit of a brainstorm and think, can we bolt some additional services or products onto this? But it's not going to be something that you're focusing on driving every single month.
I see this
and that's a KPI.
I see this play out in lots of businesses, and certainly in my industry, in a very negative way, where people can get so obsessed with trying to chase the small extra upsell dollars that they actually cannibalize and damage their core offering so much. So Connells are a really good example of this, where they chase the mortgage so much that they're not selling the houses. No. Instead of selling, a $4,000 commission for a house, they're making £500 on a mortgage. And it's at the cost of, being really good at what they're supposed to be, which is, a great person that guides you through the whole process of moving house. And I would imagine there's lots of businesses like that where it becomes such a distraction from the core that they actually become really poor at the core.
Yeah.
And that's a lookout. You've got to be careful.
I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here is that, if you're like a supermarket and you expect somebody to come in and buy multiple products from you in one go, fantastic, focus on average order value. But if you just expect them to come and buy one thing and then you might be able to bolt some extras on, then average order value is unlikely to be a KPI for you.
So give us a whiz through some of the alternatives that might be out there that, that people would be using.
Yeah. So for me, a key thing is monthly recurring revenue.
Oh, I love this.
Getting that monthly number up because, absolutely I do.
And rents and things like that. All those type of things, great.
I do a lot of bespoke work for a lot of my clients, and I love doing bespoke work because, it's all the exciting stuff, the non-mundane stuff. But at the end of the day, if I want to pay my payroll and cover my overheads, I need recurring revenue. I don't want to be worrying about whether I can afford to make payroll or not. So monthly recurring revenue, and it's probably similar for other service-based businesses as well.
Some of the best businesses out there just to cover your costs with monthly recurring revenue to start with, and everything else then becomes a real bonus. The one-shot stuff, that can be a great business model.
Yeah, absolutely. The next one is customer lifetime value.
Yep, that's about retention, really, isn't it? We've done a podcast on retention before, haven't we?
Yeah, and I think I liken it to our businesses. So take estate agency. What you charge a client is completely dependent on the value of their house. But what you want to do is try and get that client to come back to you every time they sell their house in their lifetime. So the younger you can get a client and the longer you can keep them, the more value they're going to have, rather than trying to eke every penny out of them on the average order value.
And the worse they are at holding down a relationship, the better for me, because they could divorce 2 or 3 times in their lifetime. That's a great source of sales.
Yeah, that's true. That is most of your sales, isn't it?
It's most of my sales nowadays. People just don't seem to be able to stay together for any amount of time anymore.
I think a particular favourite of mine is the amount of people that have to back out of a house purchase because they split up partway through buying a house.
That's never ceased to amaze me.
Also, the amount of people, sorry, we're going off on a tangent here, but the amount of people that get back together after deciding to split up and sell their house, and then they take the house off the market because they decide, actually, the selling process is so frustrating that we've decided it's not that bad being together and we'll stick with it.
But I tell you,
they always come back.
What always happens on that one, within 6 months to a year, the phone rings again and they're like, no, we are splitting up this time. Definitely. It didn't work. So anyway, customer lifetime value, as we say.
Another one that I think maybe touches a little bit on what we've been speaking about here is the split between your standard services and add-ons.
Yep.
And I really like this because at the end of the day, if you've got a business like mine that's built on a core service, or like yours that's built on a core service, I think understanding you absolutely do want to try and spread some of your risk. So you might have a target, for example, Simon, of saying, okay, you want 20% of your income to be from non-core house selling services. So you want it to come from the mortgage referrals, the legal, all of that type of thing. So setting that sort of KPI, I think, can be really important as well. And that is a slightly different way of focusing on getting people to spend more money with you.
Yep.
Another one is drop through. Drop through is a horrible term, it basically says if you measure how much of your sales growth becomes profit.
Okay, yeah, I get it. How much drops through to the
bottom line.
drops
through to the bottom line. So for every £1 of sales growth, how much of that becomes profit? And you can also do it on gross profit as well. So for every £1 of gross profit growth, how much becomes profit? If anyone's interested in that, it's actually my last YouTube video, so do check that out. I think it's only about 4 minutes long, and it just tells you how to calculate it and how you can use it. The next one's customer retention. It's a classic one, particularly if you are a recurring revenue business like mine, where I've got clients coming back to me month on month for bookkeeping, management accounts, that type of thing. The retention is incredibly important. We don't want customers dropping off regularly. Repeat spending and revenue per employee, gross profit per employee, all of those sorts of metrics.
One. Yeah. How much per employee? So
I don't always like revenue per employee.
It's like labour to turnover ratio. Is that kind of the same thing?
Yeah. Again, you've got to be careful about listening to James Sinclair. I hate saying it. I love him. I think he's got some really great things to say, but he works in a very specific niche, and he has very high labour costs. He's running businesses that rely heavily on headcount. And if you're a product-based business and you've got high manufacturing costs, then it's not relevant revenue per employee. So it's relevant to service-based businesses and, hospitality-based businesses that have got high labour costs, but not all businesses. And I think that's why it's really important that as a business owner, as a finance director, whatever it is that you're doing, you've got this toolbox of KPIs that you can cherry pick from and say, that is what this business needs to track to make sure it stays on track. There is no one size fits all ever. There
isn't. I think often I found that if you start by tracking all of them, you quickly learn which ones are the key ones and you drop the ones that are not so important, and you end up with a better suite of KPIs. How many is an optimum amount that you should really be tracking? How many is too many to be a distraction? How many is too little? Do you have an optimum thought?
5 weekly KPIs. And I say weekly because there's no point if you're saying that, these are the 5 things that we must do well to keep our business on track. You can't do more than 5 because there's no point just looking at them and saying, oh, did it go up? Did it go down? It went down. What do we need to do to get it up? Or it went up. What did we do that was right that we need to keep replicating? And if you're not proactively managing them, there's no point in having them. So you just really need to find that handful that are right for your business.
Great. Well, fascinating topic. Why average order value is overrated, Claire, and I think you've well and truly justified that to us today and the audience. So it's more a case of don't be led by just one thing that you hear from one guru. Just always keep yourself open-minded about all of the different options and make sure you've explored everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
I bloody love technology. If there's like a new gadget, a new tip, anything, like I always know about it, don't I? And this week it's a really small adjustment on your iPhone, but when you're on your Apple Wallet, it always used to drive me insane that I didn't know what the balance was and I would have to go into my banking app to check. But you can now connect your bank to Apple Wallet and it shows the balance on your credit cards and your debit cards that are in your Apple Wallet.
Yeah, you showed me this. This is cool, isn't it? So when you make a payment and scan, it pings up in your phone and tells you what the balance is on that credit card or what the balance is in that debit account, which is just a nice extra bit of talking about KPIs. A bit of personal finance KPIs there for you.
It might actually just be a bit depressing sometimes when I see that credit card bill racking up every month, but there we go.
Awesome.
But yeah, it just helps.
As long as you pay it off in full
every month. But particularly if it's your business account, we are a business podcast at the end of the day, but yeah, it works on some of the business cards as well. So if you go into the Apple Wallet, tap on the card and then click on 3 dots in the top right hand side, and then there's just something there that says like connect to bank or something like that, and you just do that and then it appears all of a sudden.
Yeah, you have to enable the ability for it to connect, and then all of a sudden you get a few extra features that are really quite cool.
But this is really interesting actually. I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but we are at the end and I'll go quickly. But this got us talking because I predict that at the moment I have like bank accounts with HSBC, I've got Metal, Nationwide, I've got Tesco's credit card and Amex credit card, and it really bloody frustrates me that I've got all these apps on my phone and I have to go into different ones. And I feel like this
Apple are going to aggregate all these.
Is the start of some sort of
Apple
aggregated
Money,
banking app. And that'll be the next thing. And if there's anybody out there thinking about developing it, I'd happily pay for it. It's a little bit like, if you've got like Xero, for example, you can link multiple bank accounts to Xero and look at all your statements in one place.
Yeah.
And the technology is definitely there. It's just nobody's really done that for consumers yet. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Whole open banking act that it's changed everything, hasn't it? For
massively.
The sharing of banking details. And I think we're only scratching the surface of what technology is going to do with that to add more and more convenience, as long as it stays the right side of the line of centralised currency, which is my
that's
conspiracy.
another story. But yeah, if there's anyone out there thinking about designing the app, I'd happily pay $4.99 a month. And if it's really, really good, I'd probably pay $9.99 a month. So please do get in touch if anyone's developing it.
They always say if you start a business, then, just get sign of demand from the market. And if that's not sign of demand, I don't know what is. And if anybody's looking for a robo-taxi, as I said, I'm already there for that as well. So thanks for joining us for another podcast this week. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant, do get in touch with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth. You can go to the YouTube channel to learn more free content, and you can go to the website profitcashgrowth.com to book a discovery call, and we'll see you again for more juicy tidbits next week.